it's my playground because I play in it, I stay in it, and I live in it, and it's home to me. And it's precious from right here. I love Cabrini.
I remember living in Cabrini as a very young child. There were kids everywhere. There were adults everywhere. There was a lot of greenery. There were playgrounds. There were pools. There was balls and baseball and softball and all kinds of games and fun going on. It was just a cool place to be.
This is where I grew up at. My first time coming over here when they first started the demolition, the guys broke work for the day right in my mother's living room. She kept her living room like immaculate. We couldn't even go in and sit in it. So just think that there was a bulldozer in the living room. It's like, man, mom will kill them. It's hard. I didn't think I would take it this hard, but it's hard. It's hard watching, you know, what once was your home just being destroyed. I just pray and hope that they replace it with something better for the people here, not just the people who are buying property here.
A lot of us who fought hard, we're still here. We're still standing, but a lot of people fell through the cracks. There are a lot of people who don't qualify to come back.
We have a history in the United States for pushing poor people around. You can go back to urban renewal in the 1940s and 1950s, where we basically said the housing conditions, the neighborhood conditions are bad, and we want to improve them for you, so we're going to move you out. Unfortunately, often most of those families are people of color, and often most of those families were unable to come back. So that's 50 years ago. Fast forward to transforming public housing in the United States. Many of the same types of people are being pushed out once again.
"70 acres in Chicago, bordered by Halsted, North Orleans, and Chicago Avenues. History seeps through these city blocks, just a mile from downtown, yet in a whole nother economic dimension. For 70 years, on these 70 acres stood a public housing community known as Cabrini Green.
And anyone in their right mind would love to live in that area. The Lincoln Park area, Gold Coast, near North, near West area, simply because of its proximity to the lakefront, downtown, and retail markets. And plus, all hubs of public transportation go through that area.
Initially promoted as a housing solution for Chicago's working poor, by the end, Cabrini Green was labeled one of the worst urban development disasters in the United States. In 1995, the Chicago Housing Authority began tearing down Cabrini Green. New neighborhoods called mixed-income communities would replace the high-rises. Many Cabrini residents wanted better housing, but opposed the demolition, fearing they wouldn't be included in the new development.
This is some valuable land. And it's been valuable for a long time. And you got folks who've had their eyes on this land, who want this land, they're salivating. You know, they're drooling at the lip because they want this land.
Let me be absolutely clear about this. Every family that wants to stay in the community will stay in this community, regardless of their income or age.
This is a black fight for the existence of black people on the near north side. You call Richard Daley's office tomorrow, and you tell him I am a resident of Cabrini Green, and we ain't going nowhere. We don't support your plan.
A lot of these people that live here don't have personal cars or transportation. They don't have jobs out in the suburbs. Most of their family and friends are here. So to relocate people distant like that, it would be tantamount to taking someone and dropping them off on a desert island.
I don't want to say that they don't really care about us.
But if I look to us,
originally, when the plan was announced, Cabrini local advisory council members decided to get together and fight back. Miriam Stamps, Lillian Swopes, Carol Steele, Cora Moore, many strong women fought for this land. We filed lawsuits, we marched, we rallied, we did what we had to do in order to have a right to return to our community.
This new community is not about exclusion. It's not about kicking everybody out. It's about a mixed income community, an experiment in this country which is unparalleled in any other city in this nation. This is what you have now at your town center if you're looking west on Division. It's not a pretty picture, is it? This is what you may have in the future, with the park as the central focus of the new community instead of an old, dilapidated high-rise. No new community would be complete without job opportunities, job training, and so forth.
I'm not that young and I'm acting like that because I'm sick of oppression and moving black people out of these communities.
No opportunity, or no community is going to succeed without ample job opportunities. This is the type of housing that you might see in front of the existing buildings behind it.
You all put the cart before the horse. You should have came to this community before you broke one ground, before you knocked down one brick. You should have came to this community to find out what we want, not bring something from the mayor's office of what you all want. We have something to be in this thing too. We want to be here.
If you interrupt me while I'm in the middle of what I'm talking about, you won't hear what I'm saying.
You interrupted a way of life over here, man. You interrupted a way of life over here.
Despite pushback, the CHA expanded their demolition plans. In 2000, the CHA launched a massive 10-year plan to demolish not just Cabrini, but the majority of Chicago's public housing. Called the Plan for Transformation, this $1.5 billion proposal was celebrated as the most ambitious housing restructuring in the world.
The Chicago Housing Authority is changing the look of public housing in Chicago. It's all part of the CHA's historic plan for transformation. The Plan for Transformation is a comprehensive undertaking to renew all of the city's public housing. For CHA families, a new day is dawning. This is change for the better.
The Plan for Transformation is a plan to demolish about 20,000 units of public housing. This is the most severely distressed public housing, almost all of which is in the high-rise kind of structure, and to build on the place, on the land where this public housing had stood, mixed-income communities.
So in theory, the most basic thing it's meant to do is reconnect those who are living in public housing with the rest of society. When Mayor Daley talks about it in Chicago, he says we've ended up with two Chicagos, one that was happening in public housing and one for the rest of the city. And in some ways that was quite literally true. Not only did you have housing that was set apart, you had street grids that were cut off and different from the rest of the city. You had a separate police department. You had separate garbage pickup. So you actually really had a separate set of rules, set of homes, set of institutions for public housing. So the basic thing mixed income development is trying to do is reconnect and say, we have one city for everyone. Can we create communities where intentionally we make sure that people in those communities are connected with each other?
Demolition in Cabrini Green lasted from 1995 through 2011. For 15 years, residents lived in uncertainty. As one by one, the buildings fell, people moved away, and the community disappeared. Raymond Shack McDonald lives in the Cabrini row houses with his grandmother.
I've had Shack ever since he was 10 days old. My grandmother been in Cabrini all her life, so I'm proud to be here. That's where all my family came from. That's where all my heritage is. Mayor Daley is moving us out to get higher class people in. That's how I see it. People who can pay more money. And then it'll be weird for me because I'm not used to Caucasians living over here anyway. So it'll be a whole new experience for me.
Jenner Elementary sits right in the middle of the upheaval, across from the new condos and adjacent to what remains of Cabrini Green.
Students, we hope you have a great day, stay focused, and hopefully all of you are ready to learn.
But how do you feel when you literally see the buildings coming down?
It was like the buildings had so many people, and then to see it come down, it's like everybody getting moved away. So it's like we getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's sad to see like everybody go in our neighborhood. Like it's come to an end.
I don't see how anybody could be optimistic about it. They might place some new buildings here, but it ain't gonna be the same people.
I hope that they rebuild it, but let the residents who they moved out come back in so we can be a community again.
If this was a community in some other place, people would be upset. Oh my God, you're sending all these people away. Oh, you're tearing down their houses. Oh, there'd be a lot of upheaval about it. This community, this historic community that is very resilient, very strong, and it's gone. It's just simply gone.
I would like to, first of all, extend a heartfelt welcome to our Honorable Richard Mayor Daley and the special guest that came here today.
This is the largest transformation of public housing in the world. No one else wanted to tackle this issue because it's very complex and it's very difficult and deals mostly with poverty people. And so if you stayed with the status quo, it would be unacceptable because for years this was not considered public housing part of Chicago. It was separate. It was over there. And the idea that we have moved forward and we continue to move forward in regards to rebuilding people's lives. And that's the issue, to be very frank.
Your name? And what grade you in? 8th grade? What high school you gonna go? 19th. Oh, good. Brother, there we go.
I was just wondering, how do you think we feel about like the community, like the buildings being torn down?
Well, I think there's a lot of sentiment here. Let's be realistic of public high rising, but in the long run, public high rises will be taken down all over the country.
If you grew up in Cabrini Green, would you want them to take your memories?
Yeah, but memories are always stayed within the mind. But everybody changes. Every community is changing. You can't live in the past. No one lives in the past. Thank you.
I feel he's like a hypocrite because he said he cares about us, but then people are trying to get into those buildings and they won't let them in at all.
They're tearing down our buildings, but they're building all these beautiful houses and whatever, and I see condo signs everywhere. Hey, Mr. Hello.
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're doing fine.
Yeah, as you all know, I grew up in the row houses. Used to live in 923, 714, 1161. This is my home. I got family here. My mom is here with me. What are you all's questions?
How do you feel about him tearing this down since you came
from Cabrini?
Well, let me say this. Everything changes. When I became alderman over here, the buildings were deteriorating. So my thing was, do I want to support people from my community living in these inhumane conditions? Just because it's a building You know what I'm saying? No, I want them to have better housing.
Was the people that moved out gonna be able to move in some of these new houses?
Everyone has an opportunity to move back, you know, but everybody got to be lease compliant. You know, that's the kicker. Sometimes you got to make hard decisions, and sometimes you got to get out of your comfort level to do better. Sometimes it's good to get out of the neighborhood to do better. You know, sometimes we get stuck in the neighborhood and scared to cross the street. Sometimes crossing that street may change your whole life. All right, thank you. Tell your grandmothers I said hello.
Okay.
All right, now see them in the struggle.
What happened in Cabrini Green is not unique. It is the same old same. For African Americans in the city, segregation has always limited housing choices.
I think the story of racial segregation in Chicago is the story about lines and borders and boundaries. Beginning with the Great Migration, which at its peak, tens of thousands of blacks were moving from the South to the North, moving to Chicago. And this was a time also when, especially after World War I and during the Depression and through World War II, there was very little new housing built in Chicago. So the city was pretty stagnant in terms of how big it would be. And as a result, Black folk really started to pile up in the areas where they were living.
To build Cabrini, the city of Chicago bulldozed an immigrant slum called Little Sicily. In the early 1900s, housing codes prevented Italians, blacks, and Jews from living in white-only areas. Segregation enabled slumlords to charge high dollar rents for filthy, unsafe apartments. The public was outraged about the foul and dangerous living conditions. By 1933, the country was crumbling from the effects of the Great Depression. President Roosevelt's New Deal funded slum clearance and housing construction. In 1937, Mayor Edward Kelly established the Chicago Housing Authority, the CHA. The CHA used their authority to level Little Sicily. The people of Little Sicily were forced out. No one knows where these families moved. They were simply displaced, and Cabrini Green was born on this troubled land. Cabrini Green was built in 3 phases. First, the row houses were completed in 1942. The Francis Cabrini homes were built as 2-story apartments for returning World War II veterans and their families. The CHA offered safe, clean, large apartments until tenants were able to afford their own homes. The Cabrini row houses were the first integrated public housing in Chicago. White families left Cabrini as soon as their financial situations improved. They had the freedom to move into any Chicago neighborhood that they could afford. Segregation prevented African American families from leaving black neighborhoods and housing projects, regardless of their income. Chicago-style racism in the 1940s and 50s was deadly. When the CHA quietly placed African American veterans in white areas, locals greeted their new neighbors with taunts, bricks, and even firebombs.
Those rioting really sent the signal that racial integration was not welcomed in Chicago, and that the Housing Authority was put on notice by white aldermen and the neighborhoods that their racial integration agenda was not going to fly in Chicago.
We always had lines. We always had that proverbial across the track. There was definitely a street that divided the haves from the have-nots, or divided the Soul Coast from the Gold Coast. That street as well was the dividing line between the affluent white community from the impoverished black community.
Despite all the risks, Southern black populations flowed north toward the promised land of industrial and service jobs. Once in Chicago, these new immigrants were squeezed into ghettos by Jim Crow segregation, racist real estate practices, and a mandate from a new mayor.
We must have slum clearance. While we are clearing the slums, we must prevent the spread of blight into the other neighborhoods.
Chicago was facing a dire housing crisis. Black neighborhoods were filled to capacity, while city council members repeatedly rejected proposals by the CHA to move African Americans into white neighborhoods. Chicago's legacy of segregation continued. The political solution was to maintain Chicago's color lines by building upwards in overcrowded Black neighborhoods. 23 high-rises were built. The Cabrini extensions north and south opened in 1958. Nicknamed the Reds, the extensions were 7, 10, and 19-story high-rises. By building up, the CHA tripled the amount of units that the development provided. The final phase, the William Green homes, opened in 1962. Nicknamed the Whites, the Green homes were 15 and 16-story high-rises. During the heyday of the 1950s and 60s, over 15,000 people lived in Cabrini Green, 99% of them African American. Trouble started in the 1970s. Steel mills shut, factories and stockyards closed. In Chicago, African Americans suffered disproportionately. At Cabrini Green, rent payments dwindled when residents lost their jobs. Without rental income, the CHA lacked the funds for routine maintenance. Buildings were neglected. Tenants fighting for basic services were ignored.
The beautiful emerald green lawn that was meticulously manicured when I was coming up was allowed to become brown and stomped out and bald. The playground did not get repaired. Swings broke and they weren't replaced. Things were just in constant disrepair. So that's the kind of intentional neglect that I'm talking about. You can repair a swing. You can fix a pipe. You can keep landscapers and maintenance people around to make sure that the lawns are taken care of. You can empower your residents to make sure that they take care of the place that they live. CHA chose not to do any of those things.
Even within Cabrini, there were haves and have-nots. As the buildings deteriorated, families with resources fled. Cabrini residents left behind suspected that the CHA did not want to repair the buildings because the CHA already had a plan to demolish them. When families moved out, the CHA boarded up empty units. It was cheaper than making repairs and contributed to the high vacancy rates. As the population in the towers decreased, criminal activity increased.
Where I saw my first shooting. We were playing Follow the Leader. Told the kids to follow me, and we marched out of the playground and marched along the side of the building. Got to the edge of the building. There were two guys arguing. It was a dope deal going bad, but at the time I didn't realize it. One guy pulled out a gun. The other guy started to run. The guy shot 3 times, and the other guy dropped to the ground. Got back up, and he ran off. But he was hit. We saw the blood squirt out of his body. And we were just stunned. We were frozen. We were scared stiff. And I guess it's the uniqueness of Cabrini. As a kid, you grew up with a lot of memories of, like now my children are playing. They remember this day, having a great time. But they also remember waking up in the middle of the night to a lot of gunfire. You know, a lot of police sirens. So, you know, it's a twofold thing.
In the 1980s and 90s, Cabrini Green was isolated in a bubble. It was as if the city gave up on the people who still lived there. Gang activity and drug-related violence thrived in the dilapidated buildings. Residents were blamed and shamed for the conditions in their community. In 1993, the community came together for a forum to discuss persistent violence in the area and rumors of a plan to tear down the high-rises.
You got over 35,000 homeless people in Chicago, and the last thing you need to do is tear down a building. You need to build it up.
But plans for demolition were already in motion, and there was no turning back. The first Cabrini Green buildings were demolished in 1995.
You're standing right here, right on Evergreen Street, where the sales trailer is. And today we have 3 for-sale homes left for sale out of the 145.
We went on a very long walk one day. This was last June. And we walked inside and saw these little models and imagined us as little people jumping in. And it's our community to create. I think some of the greatest urban areas are the ones that are very mixed and very integrated. And though this is a new development, we think it reconnects urban areas back to what makes urban areas so great.
This is the new mixed income community. You look down the street, they're coming out now. These are gorgeous.
What are the chances of you living in one of these?
Probably 90 to 1. I think it's a long shot.
Yeah, but aren't you supposed to be relocated to this area?
That's what they tell us. Do I believe them? No. Again, I don't know anybody that's been relocated over here. Everybody I know has been relocated to the south side or the west side.
Like Mark, thousands of Cabrini families were not able to move back. Missing their friends and wanting to nourish their need for community, many still return for a weekly gathering across the street from the new condos.
Me and about 10 friends of mine that we all grew up with decided we were sitting around over there at Sewell Park. We'd like to do something for the people that we all were kids with, grew up with, fought against, went to school with. And I came up with the idea of Old School Mondays.
When you come out on Mondays, you're definitely going to see people you haven't seen in 20, 30, 40 years.
Yes.
And it's just a joy to see them.
Kick left, bring it back, kick right, bring it back, kick left, bring it back, kick right, bring it back, kick left, back, bring right in front, then bring left in front. Now you're stepping. Step, step, dash it, slide, round it.
Here you see many generations. Some 5, 6, 7 generations deep in this community. So
it's about home.
Cabrini is going to always be home. It's going to
Even though it's not there.
Even though it's not physically here.
But as long as we're around each other, we feeling it still.
Yes.
We're still feeling the
feel
Cabrini.
it.
You feel it.
As soon as you get over
when
here,
we get over here with each other, we feel it right away.
It's undescribable.
Yes.
Many of us fought against change, and somewhere along the line, we understood that change is inevitable. And so, how do you prepare for change? And that got to be the bigger picture. How do you prepare for change?
The residents' fight for their right to return was decided by the courts. A mixed income ratio was set. 50% of units were for market rate residents. 30% were for former Cabrini Green residents. 20% were affordable rentals. Rents would be lower than the market rate, but higher than the low-income units. The economy was booming. A black neighborhood was being cleared, and there was money to be made. Unlike the other condos that began to circle Cabrini, Parkside was the first development built directly on Cabrini Green land. Peter Holston is the developer of Northtown Village and Parkside of Old Town.
We're in Unit 314 of the 111-unit mid-rise here at Cabrini, Parkside of Old Town. You can see it's a brand new unit. In fact, this is a brand new building. It's got a nice kitchen with an island and a family room. It has 2 good-sized bedrooms. We'll go down the hall here and take a peek. If this was a market rate unit, it would go for $1,100 a month. If it was an affordable, it would be $950. And if it was a public housing replacement unit, the family would pay 30% of their income, whatever that is. So here we have a nice patio. You can see the panorama of downtown. See, the land in this neighborhood is worth a lot of money. So this land has a lot of pressure on it. It's very, very valuable land. Now you can see here that you don't know who lives where. All three of our income groups are living throughout here, and we purposely did not make units special for public housing or for market rate or for affordable. Everyone lives everywhere, and that's a very important concept for this community.
We saw it as an opportunity to invest in real estate that was fairly depressed in value at the time. Getting this kind of a location, for the kind of money they were asking for, that even if the market did take a bit of a slump, we thought that this area was so intrinsically depressed because of the Cabrini Green homes being around, that once the high rises came down, that the values would at least stay the same, if not go up.
I moved here from downstate Illinois, and I was downtown, but I was over in the Gold Coast. And we were just driving down Orleans and saw it for rent, and we're like, wow, that'd be a great view of the city.
My partner is really interested in moving into the development because it was affordable. It was in a great location. He loves living near the downtown area, and because he really thought that socially it was a good idea to mix people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. I had some concerns that my being a Black person coming into a neighborhood from which other people were going to be dislocated or relocated, I had concerns about sort of being a gentrifier.
Mike, you missed the softball. It's really nice to see the neighborhood change and seeing all the new buildings coming up around here and the retail and the commercial and, the gentrification that's happening. It's awesome. It's good for the city.
When I grew up, you didn't see this type of nationality over here playing baseball. It was like they didn't exist as far as in our community when it was the project buildings was up. I want to get out there and play.
Cabrini families who want an apartment in the new mixed-income housing developments face a series of applications. Families must agree to frequent home inspections, drug tests, and criminal background checks. They must show proof of employment and that all the children are enrolled in school. Deirdre Brewster was one of the few Cabrini Green residents who qualified to return to the mixed-income communities. She now lives at Parkside with her family.
I believe the process to come back into the new mixed-income development communities, you actually have to be a nun. There is no room for mess-ups. But I think it's kind of dehumanizing for a public housing residents of Cabrini Green to have to be subject to, I believe it's a yearly drug test.
One of the ways that they made that very difficult to procure one of the new units was that if there was a family and one of the members of that family had a record or brush with the law or anything like that, then the family automatically got taken off the list. Well, what was the likelihood that in Cabrini that somebody's child would end up going to juvenile? Highly likely. So does that mean her other 6 kids got to suffer? Absolutely, that's what that means.
When my 18-year-old daughter's background check came back, she had a misdemeanor. This was from her having a fight at school, but that was something that got on her record. We had to make a tough choice in order to be back in our community. And she's now living with relatives because she could not be a part of my lease and live here in Cabrini, in the mixed income development. God forbid if she ends up homeless, what am I going to do as a mom? Not let her come here? I don't know.
Mark Pratt moved his family from Cabrini to the middle-class Chatham neighborhood on Chicago's South Side. Mark and his wife could not move into the new mixed-income community because there were not enough apartments built for large families.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
Prior to moving out of public housing, we were all under the impression that we were going to move to what we consider better neighborhoods. The word safe or safer gets tossed around a lot. Even though there was a lot of violence in Cabrini, I did feel a lot safer there simply because I knew the people who were out there committing these acts were aware of who I was and who they were aware of my family. So even though there was a lot of random shooting, there weren't a lot of random acts towards innocent people.
Out here, you can be standing outside and Joe Bob got into it with Bobby Sue, and they just drive up shooting. You have no clue. Directly behind us, on the block behind us, 3 gentlemen were killed, and they wanted to placate it as if it was the people moving.
Like the influx of public housing people.
But it wasn't so. I feel that we were rushed. A lot of people were rushed into making these decisions as far as taking a Section 8 voucher or staying where they were and just move to another unit.
Through all the changes in the neighborhood, Raymond and his family are still living in the row houses. Unlike the high-rises, the row houses have not yet been targeted for demolition.
Since the buildings came down, I haven't got in contact with my friends lately because they have been scattered. Like, I can't get in touch with them or anything. My one friend moved to the suburbs. I wish he had just come back because it's been different without him. Because like, he was always the person I could talk to and everything, but most of my friends are gone. Damn. Chopper, roll over, boy. He's a good dog. He just want to go play, that's all. I was going to ask them Caucasian people over there if I could play baseball with them, but then they little hot chihuahua dog, whatever you want to call it. My dog wanted to play with that dog, and they didn't obviously want my dog to play because they thought it was going to hurt him, but he was tied up anyway. So then that just shows they didn't want me to be around, even though my dog was tied up. How was my dog going to hurt that dog and my dog is tied up to a tree? That makes no sense. They just didn't want me over there. And that disgusts me, and I don't appreciate that, and I don't even want to play with them no more.
We're having a little block party just to help neighbors get to know each other and put positive vibes around. And I don't really know my neighbors that well. I mean, I know the people in my building and the people in the building next to me, and that's it. You know, and it seems like the subsidized folks, they all know each other. You know, like they've known each other for years.
I originally lived in the white projects for about 18 years, and then me and my mom moved right across the street to the new complex. The only time we do really have some kind of rendezvous or get to see or even know our neighbor's name is probably the block party. Yeah, that's when everyone shakes hands and, oh, where do you live? I live in apartment B over there or whatever.
I'd like to see more people. You know, we kind of had a similar turnout last time and a similar percentage where it was mostly the subsidized people that showed up, which, you know, that's fine. I just wish there was more people so that we could get more of a mingling, you know?
We asked what you do at the golf club. They said go and play golf. Where you going to play golf at?
You know, I've seen those kids around before. They live over in the 1230 Larrabee building. They come over here, and they usually have some sort of a weapon on them, whether it's a golf club like this time or sticks or bricks or whatever. The kids were giving the police officers that we have working the party a hassle.
Get the back.
he had came and took the golf club.
I know you just saying now. That's why we took this from. They going back from.
My sister came to the golf club from a little boy that was trying to destroy the pond.
Right.
And she took all the golf club from him and told him to go where they lived in.
And they not from over here, so they're
Right.
supposed to be over here. We back there.
Class prejudice is something I think that we need to address again explicitly and start people talking about why they assume the way that they do things is the right way to do it, and the way someone else does things is the wrong way to do it. The way that poor people do things is stigmatized.
I'm not certified to be a dog trainer, even though I am. And that's how I'm trying to help my grandma to understand it. I said, can I make a flyer? She says no, because you're not a registered dog trainer. But I said, it's not being a registered dog trainer. It's called, as we in Cabrini put it, on a hustle. You don't want this harness, I'm sorry to tell you. Because it is no good, no.
It's the only thing that controls him.
No, it doesn't. Watch this.
It's good with them.
Hey. Nice looking bulldog. How old is he? 1 year.
Have you ever seen him with his dog, Chopper?
No. Does he live around here?
Yeah.
And each time he does pull, make him sit. And the snap brings him out of that state of mind of trying to pull forward and brings him back to my side.
You're good.
Good boy.
It's like a different dog.
My name's Raymond 1312.
When I first moved back into my community, I felt victorious. I was like, yes, back on this land. We fought for it to be here. We're here. Oh my God. I can see the Starbucks. Well, a few months down the road, people were coming to me with all type of complaints. They're afraid that if they're standing in front of their home, they could be evicted. They're afraid that if they have too many visitors, they could be evicted. They're afraid if their TV is too loud, they could be evicted. It's like, no, this is a mixed income development. You guys, we're mixing it up. We're mixing in. And they were telling me, no, that's not what's happening.
I felt like there was a fear amongst homeowners about seeing former Cabrini Green residents sort of hanging out in groups. Just because you see a lot of Black people hanging out somewhere doesn't mean they're up to no good. This is part of our community. This is also part of a way that Black people socialize. It just is.
There are rules and regulations, and for example, just parking your car. People just didn't get that, parking spot A belonged to the bottom unit, B to the second unit, C to the top unit. And when somebody violates that one, it becomes a gigantic snowball. And then everybody is parking in each other's spots, and it just becomes a nightmare. Then people begin towing, and then they begin towing vindictively.
Well, I went to the condo meetings with great intentions of it being an inclusive process. Unbeknownst to me, some people could vote and some couldn't. The renters and public housing residents could not vote, but the condo owners could vote. And I found that to be unequal because of the issues that were being voted on. The issues that were being voted on were security issues. Well, security affects the whole area.
I saw both sides because I know both sides. It was difficult to see how both sides could kind of come to some sort of compromise.
As far as, market rate people, understanding what the whole idea of this project is, which is to help diversify the neighborhood and bring up the people who are on welfare by seeing what people who aren't on welfare live like and what the goals are. Some people get it. Some people really understand that they have to set an example for people who don't know what it's like to earn a living and to be proud of yourself and be proud of what you have.
There was this whole belief that if so-called public housing residents, remember we were very demonized, if they moved next door to such affluent neighbors, that would make them better people, which was very insulting.
I think there's a rage when you grow up and you know a community, you see that community get torn down, and then you see new people come in who expect things to change and expect you to change and say there's something wrong with you.
The plan for transformation was based on the prediction that real estate values always increase. But then in 2008, the real estate market crashed.
Housing sales dropped dramatically. We didn't see people moving in, but at some point, they had to honor the promises to former Cabrini Green residents to come in. And when Cabrini Green residents started coming in, I heard that sentiment among homeowners of, well, what's the ratio? That was a question, I think, at every board member meeting. What's the ratio? How many homes have we sold? There's a sentiment of, we feel like we're being outnumbered. And I don't know if it was more of an outnumbered by Black people or if it was more just outnumbered by people who weren't middle class.
Over here is our sales center, which unfortunately doesn't have a whole ton of people beating a door down. This is a very, very tough economy to sell condominiums and townhomes, but we hear things are picking up a little bit. We have heavily discounted our pricing, and that's brought more traffic in, but people are still having a hard time getting mortgages. That seems to be a problem all over.
Chicago has done this in as complicated a way as it possibly could be done. The speed at which the buildings were taken down originally, before a system of supports were really put in place to help residents relocate effectively, before residents could have been given the preparation to be able to navigate that type of trauma.
Raymond McDonald is now in high school. The future of the row houses is unclear.
The row houses have changed dramatically. We can't do as much. We have security guards, and the CHA is clamping down on everything. They do not want us here anymore. It has changed, to me, in the worst way possible, because it's not a community anymore.
So how's your grandmother?
She's doing well.
That's good.
And some lady, she's part of CHA, and she comes over and she made me get rid of my dog and all the other dogs.
She inspects you all.
Right, and she does it with an iron fist. That completely stopped my dog business, my dog training business.
You had a dog training business?
Yeah, I started to train dogs, and I was making money, $20 an hour, and I had to stop.
Why?
Because I don't have my key companion right there to making examples.
If things don't work, you just, get up and try again. So don't give up. Still try and do your dog training. Maybe you can use one of the dogs you train to be an example to show people what you can do with a dog. One thing that the market rate residents do, if they move here, they may not have kids, but I guarantee you they'll have a dog. So don't give up.
For most public housing families, this is their final move. I mean, this is home for as long as they want to stay. So I think we're going to have longevity on the part of the public housing folks. On the part of the market rate, they're mobile. Things change. They may get a job offer out of town. They may have a family and need a bigger place. They may have a family and have some difficulty with the schools. The schools are a challenge here.
My son is getting to the age now where, we're looking at schools for him, and I don't really want to risk, not getting into one of the better public schools here, so we're going to move to the suburbs.
We moved to Parkside to stay, regardless of whether the market would have crashed or not. Our goal was to stay here and be a part of this community.
Billions of dollars were spent on building mixed-income communities. However, the majority of public housing residents didn't qualify to live in the new homes. Most of the people from Cabrini Green were dispersed into low-income neighborhoods far from their extended families, their friends, and their jobs. The mixed-income experiment excluded thousands of poor families who needed safe, decent housing.
People in public housing are people. We're just regular folk. We value life, we value love, we value family. And Cabrini really was a community. And anyone that came to visit knew right away it was something special, something different going on. It has its own flavor. It was a piece of us that was left there on the ground, in the dirt, in the air even. The shared bond of living in public housing, of representing the HQ, living on the wild end, coming from the CG, none of that exists anymore. And I only can share that bond with a few people that I run into every now and again. And I say, HQ, and they'll smile. CG, and it's just us in the store talking.
70 acres in Chicago. A Black community for 70 years. The plan for transformation was an experiment with people's lives. But instead of a solution to a dire public housing crisis, by the end, it simply reinforced Chicago's same old lines and borders and boundaries.